Rosa Parks sitting to take a stand against segregation, created by Skylar Chandler, Mackenzie Carr, and Cameron Jones. Without Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat to a white man, the Montgomery bus boycott would not have been a huge success within the civil rights movement. This event allowed civil rights leaders to develop the skills needed to lead future anti-segregation protests. Because Rosa Parks intentionally stood against the laws of segregation, Montgomery became the practice grounds for successful peaceful protesting, the foundation of the civil rights movement.
On December 6, 1865, the 13th Amendment was created to end slavery in the U.S. While slavery might have become illegal, it did not stop many Americans from attempting to limit the rights of those that were once slaves. Many white Southerners actually benefited from slavery and attempted to keep things the way that they were. Some citizens chose to unite in order to prevent their society from changing. The KKK, or Ku Klux Klan, was an organization founded in 1866 that often used threats and violence to control the Southern black population. Because of this, many black Southerners knew of this threat and feared possible attack if they attempted to challenge the system.
The KKK were not the only ones that would limit the rights of black Americans. Lawmakers in southern states created laws often referred to as Jim Crow laws or black codes that prevented African Americans from receiving the same access to life as white Americans. This system is known as segregation, which is an action or state of setting someone or something apart from other people or things. Examples of segregation in America include separate schools for races. They had to sit in different seats or sections on public transportation. They had to sit in separated areas for public entertainment. They had to use separate water fountains and public restrooms. In some states, they even had separate hospitals and cemeteries.
The city of Montgomery, Alabama was no different. Black codes within Montgomery supported segregation. One area that was affected was public transportation. In the city of Montgomery, the law enforced segregation on all modes of public transportation. The law also allowed bus drivers to have the powers of a police officer while operating their vehicle. This means that they could, by law, assign seats to those on their bus to make sure that the law of segregation was being followed. When an African American passenger boarded the bus, they had to enter at the front to pay their fare, and then get off and reboard the bus at the back door. When the seats in the front of the bus filled up and more white passengers got on, the bus driver would move back the signs separating black and white passengers and, if necessary, ask black passengers to give up their seat.
On December 1, 1955, an African American woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery bus because she was tired after a long day at work as a seamstress. For many Americans, this is the limit to their understanding regarding the Rosa Parks story, when in truth her choice was more intentional. Parks was an active member in the local chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP. She also served as the secretary to Montgomery's chapter president. She knew exactly what she was doing when she chose to remain seated. In her autobiography, Rosa Parks even stated that, "People always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired, but that isn't true. I was not tired physically. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in." Because of her social and political awareness, Parks was fully mindful of Jim Crow laws. Previous cases, including the case of the 15-year-old Claudette Colvin, and the consequences of breaking these laws. The driver of that bus was named James Blake, and this was not their first encounter. On a previous occasion, she had paid her fare at the front of the bus. She went to the back of the bus where she was supposed to enter, but before she could enter, he pulled off and left her. On December 1st, Parks purchased her ticket and found her seat at the front row of the colored section. A white man got onto the bus but was able to sit as the white section was full. The bus driver took the colored section sign and moved it back a row so that the white man could sit down. Rosa Parks was then told to move to an empty seat toward the back of the bus. While the other 3 passengers moved, Parks refused. Because she chose to remain in her place, the bus driver contacted the police so that she would be arrested.
After the arrest, Rosa used her phone to call her husband Raymond so that he could pay her bail. When she was released, E.D. Nixon, the head of the local chapter of the NAACP, had heard about the arrest and wanted to use the case to fight against segregation. Nixon hoped for years to find an African American with a flawless public record. He wanted to use this person in a case to challenge the laws of the segregation. Nixon was able to convince the Parks family that Rosa was the perfect candidate for the job. Together they decided that the black population of Montgomery would boycott the buses on the day of her trial. News of the boycott was spread by ministers of local churches and mimeographed flyers. On Monday, December 5th, Parks was found guilty of violating segregation law, Chapter 6, Section 11 of the Montgomery City Code. She was given a suspended sentence and fined $10 plus $4 in court costs. To their surprise, news of the boycott spread fast and the bus system lost 75% of their riders within a day. Nixon and some ministers decided to take advantage of the moment. Together they formed the Montgomery Improvement Association, or MIA, to manage the boycott. They even elected Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as the MIA's president. The MIA, Alabama church supporters, mimeograph flyers, and front-page articles from local newspapers kept the city of Montgomery prepared and informed. On December 5th, an estimated 40,000 African American bus riders boycotted the system in hopes that the protest would force the city to change. To make sure that the boycott would be a success, black leaders used methods that would cause the city to lose a lot of its money. They organized carpools to take people to work, and they also got many of the city's African American taxi drivers to charge 10 cents to their black riders. Many black residents even chose to walk to work. The MIA organized regular city meetings to keep their supporters informed. Throughout the boycott, Rosa Parks was an active member of the protest and acted as the face of the movement. She often met with the boycotters, attended MIA meetings, and encouraged people to keep fighting even when it was difficult. After 13 months of nonviolent protesting, the city bus system of Montgomery was forced to negotiate. On June 5, 1956, the Montgomery Federal Court ruled that any law requiring segregated seating on buses due to race violated the 14th Amendment. The case was then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. On December 21, 1956, the integration of Montgomery buses was enforced.
They won! After 381 days of protesting, they finally achieved their goal of ending segregation on public buses. While this might not have ended all segregation, it allowed the MIA, Rosa Parks, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to gain experience in leading successful protests and boycotts.
Because of her decision to stand against bus segregation, the city of Montgomery was able to unite under her arrest. Together with local support, they were able to successfully boycott the bus system and force the city to integrate. We are now able to have access to restaurants, areas of entertainment, modes of public transportation, hotels, and much more regardless of our race. This event provided leaders of the movement like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. experience in fighting segregation with peaceful protest. Even though she lost her job and faced public harassment, she continued to fight for integration. Without Mrs. Parks, the civil rights movement would have looked a lot different.